Jacob has now been with his uncle Laban. He's got his 2 wives. He has all these children. And God speaks to Jacob, and he said, Jacob, it's time for you to go back home. It's been 20 years. He had to be with his uncle Laban for 20 years. He said, it's been 20 years. It's time for you to go back to your own land. He said, and I'm going to be with you. He goes, and you're going to get the land that I promised your grandpa Abraham. He goes, your dad Isaac, and you're going to have so many children. It's going to be like the sands in the desert. And so he goes, but go back home. So Jacob gathered his wives, he gathered all of his children, he gathered all of his things, and he said, it was time for me to go home. But he was a little worried about something, because back home there was a very angry brother. And it'd been 20 years, but he didn't know if Esau, the brother, did he still want to hurt him? No. Did he still want to kill him? No. Maybe he did. And so he was worried about that. And so he prayed to God, and he said, God, he said, you promised. Now this is how Jacob prayed. God, you said I'm supposed to go back home. He said, you said I would have so many descendants that they would be like the sands of the desert. So be with me. You bless me, be with me, and help me and not have my brother hurt me when I get there. And so when he went, he decided to do this. He sent a servant out to his brother, and he said, okay, go to my brother and find out if he's still angry with me. And say, hey, I'm coming back home. I just want peace. Help me to go back home and not be angry with me. And so he said, and go find out how my brother's feeling. So Jacob and his family, they're waiting for the response. All of a sudden, the servant comes back, and guess what? The servant says, we found your brother, and he's coming to see you. And he's not coming by himself. He's coming with 400 of his men. Oh, no. Jacob is worried. He's like, oh, no, God. He said, he's coming with 400 of his men. He's going to come get me. Please. And then again, he prayed. He said, you said, God, that if I would go back home, you'd be with me. You said, God, that you would give me so many sons that would be like the sands of the sea. You said it. I believe it, but I'm in trouble. And so he decided to go ahead, and he separated one part of his family over here, another part of his family over here, and he stayed all by himself next to a brook of water because he wanted his family to be safe, and he thought, I got to be by myself with God. And sometimes when we're in trouble, guess what? We need to take time to be just by ourselves with God. And so he's out in the middle at night all by himself. And he's worried, what if my brother comes and gets me? What if my brother kills all of my children? What if he kills my wives? What if these 400 guys are going to come and hurt me? And so all of a sudden he sees somebody walking towards him. And guess what they start to do? You think they shake hands and say, hey, how you doing, Jesus? No. They start to wrestle. Jacob starts to wrestle with Jesus. And they're wrestling, and they're wrestling. And oh my goodness, the wrestling is going on all night. Jacob is wrestling with Jesus. He's wrestling, he's wrestling. And finally, Jesus is saying, let me go. It's turning into daylight. Let me go. And so Jacob will not let Jesus go. And so Jesus touches him right here on the hip. It wasn't a hard touch. He just touched him. Because remember, Jesus has all the power in him. He touched his hip. And all of a sudden, Jacob's hip gets dislocated. It comes out of the socket. And ow! Now, he's in a lot of pain, and he starts crying. But guess what? He does not let Jesus go. Even though he's got an owie in his leg, he's like, Jesus, I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. So he's holding on to Jesus. He said, I'm not going to let you go, Jesus. And he's weeping and he's crying. I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. And so Jesus goes, whoa. And he stands up and he said, what's your name? Now, does Jesus know what his name is? No. Yeah, Jesus knows everything. So Jesus knows his name is Jacob, and he wants him to say it. And so he said, my name is Jacob the trickster. Now, the reason Jesus asked him his name was he wanted him to confess. Because when we make bad choices, God wants us to say, yeah, I'm Yolanda. the girl that has no listening ears. Or I'm Yolanda, the trickster. Jesus wants us to confess it. To confess the yucky in our heart. And so he said, I'm Jacob, the trickster. And so Jesus said, you know what? He said, today, you're going to get a new name. Because you wrestled with me all night. Even though you were hurt and you were weeping and crying, you would not let me go. You prevailed. That means you had victory. And he goes, and I'm going to change your name. And your name is going to be no longer trickster. Your name is going to be Israel. Because Israel means God prevails. God prevails. He goes, you held on to me with